Hi, I am Brent Feldman, and we are back with another episode of Mix and Matchbox. Today, I am joined by Mark Cantor of Cantor Injury Law, and we're looking forward to jumping into some questions. So, hi, Mark, how are you doing?
Doing great, Brent. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm excited to be here.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we can probably jump right in really quickly. So I'll start right off the bat. The first one about how did you kind of make your way into the legal profession, and what are the elements that sort of keep it interesting from day to day?
So, when I was growing up, my father, Harvey Cantor, is a local pediatric neurologist, a brain doctor for children. And so we would go on like family trips, and on the family trip, he would take care of patients. So every year we would go, and that was like just part of the culture of our family, helping sick and disabled people. I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor. I'm no biologist, and my math skills are not that great, but my verbal skills were always very, very strong. And I think I have a great courtroom presence. I think most people on our side and on the opposing side would agree. So when I wasn't going to be a doctor, I decided that I could help people to what my father did by becoming a lawyer. And actually, when I started, I started for another firm, and then when I was 20 years old, I opened my firm, the Cantor Law Firm at the time, in my father's pediatric neurology medical office. And so I really enjoy helping people, and that keeps it exciting for me. And obviously, we've grown it to the point that we are, well known, and we're a leader in the field in Missouri. So that's the answer.
That's cool. So you've been growing your practice for many years now, and definitely you've seen, the firm change as well as sort of the marketing for it. What are some of those things that you've kind of had in your purview as you've gone through the years, and how it's changed to market yourself as a lawyer, an individual, and your practice?
A great question. In the early days, from 93 to 98, I was the Cantor Law Firm. And I started with simple word of mouth advertising. My father sent a letter to his patients, friends and family referred people to me. And I didn't really do any marketing. And that continued from 98 to about 2015. I didn't do any marketing at all for the most part. I mean, we had a TV ad or two, but they weren't successful because I had an associate at the time, and we didn't advertise a lot. When I changed the name to Cantor Injury Law, I started a large advertising, and that worked. I mean, I grew tremendously to 7 lawyers and a lot of paralegals, and we're a service-oriented business. So it's still mostly word of mouth, but I consider television and billboards and things like what Matchbox does for me on Google, search engine optimization. I call that the stereo effect. So people know who you are from your reputation for winning. We've had a lot of slogans. Justice for the injured and their families is like my go-to, but modern, aggressive, and winning. And now we've changed it to get the big bucks with Cantor Injury Law, because we have a retreat center called Cantorland, and we can talk about that later. But it's true to us. It's true to Missouri. It's true to me because I love to hunt. And so there's a lot of plays on that. Don't take the little dough from the insurance company, get the big bucks. And then others that are more funny that my family doesn't want me to use, like I'll kill for the win. Doing that, but it is funny. So yeah, get the big bucks with Cantor Injury Law is kind of where we're.
That's cool. I appreciate any and all puns. So yeah, that definitely works on me. And it's cool that you're kind of vouching for the what you mentioned was like the stereo effect. It's like a common trope of marketing that you got to hit multiple touch points. People aren't going to remember just one place that they see you, and if you aren't in multiple places, you might not get that call. So actually, I completely agree with that sentiment, and it's serious. It's definitely real. We've seen it play out over time. So I guess the other thing too is I wanted to touch on the fact that, like, initially you kind of got some marketing by starting with your father and him helping out a little bit. And actually, there's a little bit of commonality in our story. My dad was basically a bespoke suit maker, custom tailor in the St. Louis area, and actually his client base, he was the one who would refer some business to us, people that we should reach out to and get in touch, and that really wound up in our first client. So, like, in much the same way, that was extremely helpful to kind of get our business off the ground.
I didn't know that. I've ordered suits from Bespoke Apparel.
Oh, actually, so the name of his organization, his company is Made to Measure. And anyway, and so, but yeah, Mark Feldman, he's been actually doing it for a long time. But yeah, it's really it's cool, and it's cool to actually and I don't know if you got the same experience, but when people would know your father and they got interactions with you, that they're like, oh my gosh, I know your dad, and then would tell you stories about your dad.
And there's nothing better than a custom made suit. Now when you buy a suit off the rack, it's more expensive than the custom made suit, and it's not nearly the quality.
Yeah.
So for watching, if you're a professional, I'm a strong advocate of custom made, custom tailored shirts, suits, the whole bit. In fact, my suits have a holster in the coat to support, if you want to carry.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And that's the kind of stuff you can do with custom suit that you just can't do otherwise. I'm glad he would be really excited about the endorsement of custom stuff, because yeah, you would never find the same quality off the rack. That's for sure. Well, I'm sure you frequently receive some pretty harrowing stories, being an injury lawyer, from the potential clients or actual clients that you have. But you have to vet them at the same time for being something worth the time to get involved with, for all parties, because certainly you don't charge the fee for your services until actually you're until you win. And so obviously you have to make sure that these are things that you want to be a part of, that you're confident you can win, so that it plays out well. How it sounds like that has to be a tough decision. How do you kind of go about making those kind of decisions?
We screen very carefully. So a lot of times you could have a huge injury and no liability. I mean, sometimes bad things happen. And that's obviously not a case that we'll handle, because we're on a contingency fee. So, you can see a devastating harm,
Mm-hmm.
not have a recovery. And there's certain, aspects where there's immunity. So like if the government does something wrong and it causes you harm, they're immune from liability. A lot of people come to us with medical malpractice cases. We accept almost no medical malpractice cases, because it's got to be a breach of the duty of care that caused damages. So for instance, infections happen. We handle those cases occasionally, but most infections are just that. It's an infection, and you can't blame someone for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we analyze very carefully whether the case is real. If the case is real, we'll help. If it's not real, we don't want it. And there's got to be a recovery, because that's the way we get paid. So there's some tragic cases out there where people are underpaid, and we handle those all the time, because what we do, if you have an injury, we'll help you, and sometimes we cut our fee or waive our fee. And now Missouri has something called the Missouri Tort Victims Compensation Fund, where if you're underpaid, you can get up to $300,000 more. And a lot of out-of-state attorneys don't know anything about it, and they aren't handling it. Some of the big advertisers aren't handling Missouri tort victim compensation cases. So I really think you need a local lawyer, but we only want the real cases. If the cases aren't real, we're not going to help. Slip and falls, lots of slip and falls. But in Missouri, it's got to be a dangerous hidden condition of property that caused you to fall. So if you just fall, there might not be any liability. Falls happen. So if you fall on something that you see, there's no liability. Like, oh, I saw it was upturned, but I still caught my toe on it and fell. And now I want to assume, well, that's not for my law firm.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a hidden condition. So we're not going to help.
Yeah.
Fellow law firms that might handle that case, but we're not going to manipulate the testimony. We're not going to change your story. If the case is real, we're going to help you, and if it's not real, we're out.
Yeah.
But I got the largest verdict in Morgan County, which is near the Lake of the Ozarks, for a person that fell at a gas station on a wet floor, and the defense of that case was they put a sign out. Well, the caution sign was always out, and in this case, it was folded up by the door. And my person went to the bathroom, and while they were in the bathroom, they mopped the entirety of this small store. So when she came out of the bathroom 2 minutes later, the condition of the floor had changed, and she fell and broke her hip. And we got a huge verdict on a no offer case. So that's the type of case that's real. Like, you didn't know. You walked in the bathroom, it was dry. You walk out, it's wet. So we analyze those things very carefully.
Definitely. And I mean, like, to a certain degree, you hope that leads to, better protocol for those businesses, those involved, to make sure that obviously they're doing their due diligence to warn people and keep them safe.
Absolutely. And those cameras at gas stations and everywhere else, I argue this to the jury, and it's true. Those cameras aren't to protect you. It's to protect the store's money.
Mm-hmm.
So we had this person frantically mopping. They were supposed to be off at 12, and it was 12:10.
Mm-hmm.
So they really wanted to go. So they did a terrible job. They didn't put the sign out. They didn't rinse the mop or dry it. And the video had it all.
Yeah.
Except for the fall, because it was caught when the person fell. They were behind a thing, but you could see her start to fall. And so they had to move the safety mat to mop in that rapid manner. And the jury, understood. So those cameras are there to protect the stores,
Mm-hmm.
protect the public, but sometimes they help us.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how much you can talk about it, but I do remember about the story Brian was also telling me about, how I believe it was somebody who had an incident. Maybe it was at a casino or something, and then they found the video, and then that was
Yeah. Well, Brian is a great lawyer. Most casino cases are confidential.
Mm-hmm.
So I hate confidentiality provisions because the confidentiality protects the bad actor. But so I don't know which case that is that he was speaking of. And generally, we've sued a lot of different places before, like casinos and things like that. But I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about. And even if I did, I wouldn't address it.
Understood. I won't say another thing then.
Listen, that's the problem with confidentiality, right? Trucking and transport companies for hire, they always want confidentiality. So, think of apps. They always want confidentiality. They have huge insurance coverage. And so they do something bad, or the driver does something bad, or the truck does something bad, and they squeeze someone out, and they cause, we have a case that's not Jerry Moore. He was injured, and we got him $2.2 million, and from a big trucking company. And trucks, by the way, have videos too.
Mm-hmm.
Have black boxes, and you want to get all that information. But then a lot of these trucking companies, they want to keep it quiet. They've paralyzed someone. And you know what? When you have a client that's presented with a lot of money, but they say, the defense say, we're going to give you all this money, you have to agree to never talk about it. It makes it tricky for us as lawyers, right? Because the client wants the money. And so sometimes we have to, hold our nose and agree to that confidentiality. In truth, confidentiality, I think, harms the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bad actors, it keeps it hidden.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that may influence, and you see why they're doing this, but it may influence people's decision to use that trucking company, for instance, if they're like, oh my gosh, they were involved in that and they tried to cover it up and they did X, yeah.
And that had a prior felon. And, we've had cases where truck drivers have caused huge injuries and death, and they were on drugs, and the company knew or should have known.
Wow.
And then resolve that and have confidentiality. And then, you're left with this driving kids, and so you hold your nose, and you take their millions of dollars, and you can't tell who the company was, how much you got, the circumstances of it, and that makes it true. And as a lawyer, you want to shout from the rooftops, look what these people did. They did family. Look at this deserving person that's left without a father, but you can't. And so that's to me, I think that's very unfortunate.
Definitely. Yeah. Wow. Well, is there, I'm sure, it sounds like obviously you've gone through a lot of cases, definitely a lot of even potential cases. There's a lot of other attorneys that are competing for this type of business. I certainly know this kind of personally, but, hearing it from you, how do you differentiate?
So first of all, we're only looking for cases here, Missouri, Southern, the entire state of Missouri. We've got offices throughout, but we're not looking for cases in New York or California or Florida. Lawyers advertising that have the biggest advertisements and the biggest budget, it doesn't help a person in Missouri, in the show me state, if there's lawyers in California and New York. That doesn't help them. So that's like, some of these slogans are really foolish, and it's surprising me that they're working in Missouri, the show me state, because what's important to our clients is the size of the check at the end of the. We differentiate ourselves by being local. We're modern, we're aggressive, we're winning. We really are on the same side of the table with our clients, fighting against these big insurance companies, and we care, and that makes it. I suspect that every lawyer says they care, but you've got to, the client needs to analyze, do they really care, or are they just saying that on TV? And we don't want all these little cases. We don't want a bad case or a fraudulent case or an illegitimate case. We want the cases in Missouri, and most people know that, and they send them to us, because if you ask around who's got the reputation, and that's why I went with our latest slogan of, Cantor Injury Law gets you the big bucks. Because in the end, what our clients in Missouri and Southern Illinois want is a big check. They want the big bucks. And I think we're in the best position for those clients at our firm, because we care and we're there to help them. Now, there's a lot of other lawyers advertising. Some of them are fantastic. There are some great personal injury lawyers in Missouri. Some of them aren't. And some of them aren't even from Missouri. Some of them on TV have never tried a case in Missouri, ever. And they see them constantly. So I think it's fair to say to the public that the choice of a lawyer is a very important decision. And it shouldn't be based just on advertisements. Don't base it solely on advertisements. You're going to get fooled, because the advertisements are big and they're slick and they're in your face and they get you nodding your head and agreeing. But you got to be buyer beware, right?
Yeah.
So in Cantor Injury Law, we're all from Missouri. We all live here. We all work here. And we have one or two gals from Southern Illinois, but we're all the same locale. We're not in Florida or New York or California advertising here in Missouri, which is what some of these groups are doing. And more, when you watch TV, you see lawyers from Kansas advertising here. That's all fine and good if the case can be resolved. But if you have to start going to court, you think that the lawyer from Kansas is going to drive every time to St. Louis County, City, or St. Genevieve, or St. Charles? You think they're going to drive in and try that case for you? If they're in Florida, no, they might find another associated lawyer. But then who did you hire? You hired the guy on TV. At Cantor Injury Law, when you hire the guy on TV, you're going to be sitting on the same side of the table with me. Probably not in my home where I am right now, but I love some of my clients. I've been friends with some of my people for 30 years now. My first clients, I still talk to them. I got a buddy, Terry Evans. I met him when I was a 24-year-old kid. I'm 54 now. He was my very first client. I'm still friends with him. He's in one of my ads. He's great. He's a Department of Corrections officer. Great guy. Now I've represented him. Legitimate cases only. I have family. So
that I
That's the point.
I think that's really cool that, like, almost like the sentiment is to like interview them like you would anybody for other, home services. You're not just going to talk to one contractor to do some work on your home. You're not going to just, talk to, one, sort of bank if you're going to, look for an account. Like it's really, if you're, as you mentioned, it's a big decision, and you want to know and respect that person.
Right. And it's not just, when you get the lawyer, it's not just the lawyer you're hiring. When you hire the guy on TV that's in Florida, he doesn't have the same doctor connections. You know, my father's a pediatric neurologist. When you get me, you get my friends and my family, my connections. I've lived here my whole life. I'm friends with the best surgeons, doctors, accountants, lawyers. I know everybody because I've lived here and this is the world I live in. And so if, I've helped people and they, along the way, they, have a family law dispute. I say, well, I don't handle that, but my wife, Amy Cantor, does family law and she's brilliant. Or here these other people are, or I need a surgeon, and they give you a list of surgeons. And I say, well, these 3 surgeons are good, but they exclusively for the insurance companies. So they're going to give you a defense opinion. They're going to say that you needed the surgery and they're going to do a good job on the surgery, but the cause of the need for that surgery is degeneration and spondylolisthesis, a narrowing of the canal. And you're going to say, well, listen, I'm a 35-year-old. I didn't have any problems until I got hit by this truck, and then I needed the surgery. My surgeon's going to look at it and say, the accident, whatever, true, right? If you have a 3-year history of back pain and then you get hit by a truck, it's different than if you have no history of back pain, get hit by a truck, and then need a fusion. You want to make sure you have a doctor that's going to tie all that together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's cool. And I mean, like, and actually I think that brings up yet another point, which is like, yeah, the network matters. It's not just about, that person, like you're saying, it's about, all those people you're connected to, but that's cool.
And you don't want a paralegal that is in Florida, and you might get that if you're not careful. So, my paralegals have been with me for years and years and years. I mean, I have 3 paralegals for, 10 years or more. That's of continuity. It's a good workplace. It's a successful environment where people get paid appropriately and according to where people want to work and stay at work. And we don't do anything remote at Cantor Injury Law. So I don't have paralegals that are living elsewhere in Missouri. They're in the office. I'm not in the office today because we're doing this, and I have dogs at the office that required. People, we have some days we have 3 dogs there. We normally have at least 1. Kids and all that. So but my point is that makes you local, because you are,
That's cool.
So.
That's really neat. Well, and I mean, like, speaking of those, like, things that are like, really impactful for you, maybe not even necessarily just generally monetarily, but like, what are some of those, like, cases and wins, that have been the most impactful to you?
Boy, I've had a lot of them, but my favorite client of all time was a woman, may she rest in peace, named Joan Alter. And Joan slipped at the science center where she worked during a construction project and fell on a post that hidden. So you were walking along, and then she took a left turn, and there was a post out. She fell, and she broke her shoulder, and she had to have multiple surgeries, and she had a lot of other problems. And the offer in that case was $500. And we got her about $1 million. I think it was just under $1 million. But that case was impactful just because of the sweet of a woman Joan Alter was. She died of unrelated things, unfortunately, about a year ago. But this woman would come by. She'd send me a card every holiday. She'd come and have coffee with my staff. I mean, I'm talking about years after the case was done. She gave me a little sign about gratitude that still hangs in my office. So it's a win-win-win, because I got to help a sweet lady that deserved it. She deserved every single penny. And I posted it. People like years ago, like, well, what was the attorney's fee and this and that and this? You know, she had a comp case and she had a civil case, and we only charge 25% in comp. And then we, you know, we don't take a fee on the medical bills and stuff like that. And she's very happy. 500-hour offer, got a huge recovery. But I mean, the point is, there's a lot of nastiness out there about lawyers. This was a legitimate injury with a great recovery for a deserving woman, and that's, you know, worthy of talking about. We've had other multi-million-dollar recoveries that I can't talk about because of confidentiality. We've had cases on our website for millions of dollars. We've had a lot of great wins. I've got two partners, Brian Weinbright, who has he's got more intellect than anyone I know. He's brilliant. Kevin Glenn, who was on the defense for 16 years before he came over to our side. We've got other associates like David Poe. These are quality, good guys. Jason Hackett, Jarrett Stein, brilliant lawyers that are doing good things for good people every day. So too many cases to tell you about, but you know, we've had some huge success in medical malpractice cases, and some as co-counsel on other cases, and some, you know, workers' compensation cases. I had a client that injured himself at Step Brothers Bridge and Iron, a guy named Dale Weeda, and he's passed away too. I represented him since the late 90s. And he had he was working and had a injury to his neck while he was welding. He felt a pop, and it was on a huge I-beam that had shifted, and he ended up having multiple surgeries. The surgeon for the insurance company, the work comp insurer, said that he was diabetic, and that's why he needed the fusion, and that's why it didn't fuse. And I deposed this surgeon who was lying through his teeth for about an hour about the diabetes. And he's like, yeah, client Dale Weeda was not compliant with his medication. I talked to him about his diabetes and controlling his blood sugar. And all that was a lie, because my client did not have diabetes. So the doctor got it wrong. The insurance company doctor said my guy had diabetes. My guy didn't have diabetes. And then the industrial commission found that doctor to be biased, uninformed, and not credible, which is a huge victory, because it means that I took a bad actor out. He's a much less effective actor, because now everyone on either side, if you're opposed to him, has a court ever found you, or in the industrial commission ever found you to be biased, uninformed, and not credible? And there's other doctors that have been found to be prevaricators, which is a fancy term for liars. So when I was growing up, all these experts were like my father. They were like honest and had integrity, and they couldn't be bought and sold. And unfortunately, I was wrong about that, naive, because some of these doctors are bought and paid for by the insurance companies. And so when you can take one of them out and help a client at the same time, like Dale Weeda, that's a huge victory. And by the way, I tried that case to the Division of Workers' Compensation 4 or 5 times, and to the Industrial Commission, and up to the Court of Appeals, and we won it at every level.
Wow.
I don't handle that much work comp now. I think that system is we do accept permanent and total or severe injury work comp. Work comp, no one's ever happy with work comp, because it's conspiracy. It's, you know, the insurance company conspiring to not pay injured workers, and they've conspired with our government and large employers. It's disgusting. So we'll still handle the work comp cases if they're severe, but otherwise, you know, we don't, you know, we're not handling, you know, toenail cases. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Got to hang.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I know you do a lot of, you know, like car accident cases as well. I mean, like, you know, certainly it's it, you know, happens quite frequently. We've heard about the rise in traffic accidents and stuff. And actually, I think I heard even just on this morning's drive on NPR that they were talking about how they're making traffic law updates because of the uptick in, either, injury, death, maiming and stuff by, just whether it be bystanders, civilians, people that are actually in the automobile. So anyway, it sounds like there's, things that are hopefully going to change in terms of like, whether it be narrowing of lanes or like, installing roundabouts and regardless of your opinion on efficacy of those things, are there any things that, you think based on your experience or seeing things that you'd like to see changed that you feel like would be helpful to keep more people safe on the roadways out there? It's a
Well,
big question.
yeah, no. Well, anytime you get behind the wheel of a car in Missouri or Illinois, you have the duty to use the highest degree of care, that degree of care that a very careful person uses under the same or similar circumstance. Unfortunately, Missouri does not have good dram shop liability, meaning for bars that serve alcohol. Those are tough cases. You got to knowingly serve a visibly intoxicated person for there to be dram shop liability in Missouri. I think that's a high standard. I'd like to see that lowered. I think that bars have obligations to not serve drunk people, and they can keep, even if the person isn't visibly intoxicated, if they've given that person 8 tequilas in the last hour, maybe there should be some liability there. Take that person's car keys away, call them an Uber or a Lyft, and hopefully that, or a taxi, and hopefully that service will get them home alive. But, I like the seatbelt laws. My now 18-year-old son, Zachary, had a nice BMW because he's a spoiled rich kid. I spoiled and spoiled rotten. And he left in front of a moving vehicle, and thank God he had airbags. His car was totaled, and so was the car that was probably speeding a little bit. Still my kid's fault. So thank God for safety devices. So after that, it was a used BMW, by the way, but it was still a very nice car, too sporty for a 16-year-old. My wife made me, Amy, my wife made me and my son buy a Subaru. Subaru is not like that manly of a car for a 16-year-old testosterone junkie, but it's got every safety feature in the world. If you sit in the back seat of that Subaru and you don't have your seatbelt on, the car like whines at you, like starts beeping at you. So annoying, smart. You want to get you want to get the best technology you can in a car. So, the extra cameras and pre-collision warnings and all those things are going to save lives. And so, texting and driving, so many people are distracted. If it's not illegal in the state of Missouri, it should be illegal in your family. If you're giving your car to a youngster, tell them, here's the rules. And we use something called Life 360 so I can see how fast they're going and where they're going. It's a little bit Big Brother-ish, but these are children and we have an obligation to our children. So I'm a big advocate of safety features. I think that I don't like making too many laws, but I think that these are a good approach to lawmaking. I like to keep the government out, which is different than a lot of trial lawyers that are different in you. But I think it's reasonable for a family to require that, and you probably ought to. And I also think it's reasonable for the law to be on your phone and drive. It's just too many deaths.
Yeah, definitely. And it's awful to see how common it is. You look over at, just about any other driver and they've got the phone up, and like, acting like they're looking around it. And you're just like, all you got to do is put it down. All you got to do is drive.
Okay, right. Think about this. In the 80s or 90s, when you saw someone putting on their makeup or eating a sandwich in their car, you thought they were distracted. I remember my father being mad, looking over at a woman putting on her makeup, like pay attention and drive type thing that he said to us. My dad would never yell at him, but he made his point. Now you see people now they're eating, they're brushing their hair, and they're looking at their phone. And it's like, there's no way they're driving that car. They're not using the highest degree of care. That's for sure. So auto drive I had Tesla for a while. Great car, great technology. You get a little battery anxiety over it. But that type of technology, I have a Ford Raptor now and it keeps you in your lanes. That type of thing makes a difference Now, I try not to ever get distracted, but no one's perfect, and those things will save lives.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
that's cool.
yes.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I know, and driving in general, no matter what, it can be dangerous. So yeah, I agree with the sentiment that like, yeah, the more safety features you can have and afford to have on your vehicle is like literally might as well opt for them. So I guess on that same note, with more assistive technology for drivers, do you have any idea of how this might affect your line of work? Certainly, we've heard about the famous cases with Tesla self-driving, and like somebody turns it on autopilot and doesn't have their hands on the wheel, and it results in injury and or death or something. And certainly with more assistive driving in general, whether it be keeping you in your lanes, the super cruise feature, quote unquote, there's like so many different new, sort of automator maker specific driving features that help you not have to do as much behind the wheel. But how's that going to affect you?
Well, I hope that it reduces my amount of cases and makes the community safer. I've been blessed that I've been very successful and made a lot of money in this business. So having fewer cases that are better quality um, would be a great thing. So I hope that it makes the community safer. It's surprising what keeps me in business isn't the accidents as much as it's the insurance companies.
Hmm.
The accident already happened. So it would be great if we had perfect technology. It would also be great if the insurance companies paid what they owed when they owe it. But insurance companies are in the business of collecting premiums and not paying benefits. So they don't do that. The insurance companies are what keep trial lawyers in business. If they did the right thing, you wouldn't need a lawyer. So so you asked me about what things should be legislated. Um, I've seen insurance companies make terribly wrong decisions, mean, cold, evil decisions where they clearly owe. And that's when you get it. The way you win big, by the way, is when the insurance company doesn't analyze the case properly. And they do that all the time. So the cases like the one I told you about, Joan Alter, that's a case of where they didn't analyze it properly. Now at the end they did because they resolved it on the verge of trial. But on the case of Dale Weedo, the one I told you about where the doctor got it all wrong, the insurance company was relying upon their doctor. No one ever looked at the records to see that my guy never had diabetes. So if the insurance company had that right, they could have come and they could have said, hey, we're going to offer you this and give you something to walk away from, or not. And it's a challenge. Sometimes I tell my clients, you've been offered this $1 million, but there's $1.5 million. I think we should go for it. And they say, well, no, we want to be done. We don't want the stress of the litigation. And so if the client wants something done, the point is the companies are doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if the right thing, it would greatly affect my business much more than these technology changes. I'd love to see a safer community.
Yeah, wow. I feel like we have a whole another podcast we could probably do on what we'd like to see done, whether it be from medical or auto insurance for that matter.
Look, I mean, I can give you a brief example of something the legislature could require insurance companies to do. I'm a Second Amendment guy. Most of America is. We got lots of guns. Okay. Insurance companies in Missouri you're required to have an amount of insurance on your car. Why don't we require homeowners insurance to insure the home that has the gun in it so it's misused and harm someone, that there's liability there? If they did that, all of a sudden every insurance company would require that if there's a gun in the home that there be a safe. I'm a Second Amendment guy, but I'm also a guy. Every gun should be in a safe every time. That would avoid a lot of problems. So I can think of some things, although I don't want to be too intrusive, but I really dislike insurance companies already because I've seen it. So like if I can think of a way to legislate that's going to, fix society and burden these insurance companies some, I'm all in.
Yeah.
And that's just one idea. I got a lot of them because I sit around and think about these things, but Yeah.
That means we got to have a second podcast or something coming up here. We'll take a whole time to dig in on those. It's fascinating. Well, just a little bit ago, you had mentioned, that your wife Amy is actually a lawyer as well. So I know this must be hard, but how do you avoid chatting about work, or do you just dive right in and always chat about
It's
cases?
fun. Amy's heard my war story so many times. We don't talk, and sometimes we won't even watch legal shows. I'm not a particular strong advocate fan of legal shows. I think they're poorly done for the most part, misleading and just wrong. Um, but we Amy celebrated our 29-year wedding anniversary. And we went on a trip, and I don't think we discussed law even once. We did discuss.
Congratulations for both parts of that.
We talked about pickleball and vacations and kids. We have a wedding daughter, but I think we kind of talked about the office a little bit, just because Amy has an office within Cantor Injury Law, but she's her own deal.
Mhm.
So yeah, we avoid that.
Cool. And I think that probably is all for the better.
Whenever I ask Amy, she's always the harshest opinion. Like, hey, if you were on the jury, how much would you give for this person? And she's like, I don't think I'd give him anything. I'm like, what? I don't like that case. Are you kidding me? You
Yeah.
know, uh, yeah.
So and it's funny that you led right into the next question with part of the first part of the answer about watching like legal shows and stuff. But it's how does knowing the intricacies of the legal system, how these insurance companies act, how sometimes clients stories and stuff, all the how does that color how you watch those shows? You mentioned already that it's not one of your favorite things to watch, but I'm sure it must be tough to see it the same way.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when you read an article in the paper, even, or you watch a TV show, you're getting the very tip of the iceberg. So when it says the case settled for $1 million, there's a lot that didn't hit the paper, is not part of that TV show. How did that negotiation happen? Which insurance companies contributed? Which lawyer and law firm was on the other side? Which insurance company was on the other side? What was there? Was there a smoky room meeting? Because those sometimes happen, and it's sometimes not pretty, but you have the obligation to advocate zealously for your clients, and sometimes it's ugly. It's always ethical. I always do it ethically, but it's sometimes so those shows do not portray any portion of reality when they're about civil damages. I mean, every once in a while, a dynamic scene, and it's also unrealistic.
Yeah.
So, and for years I was building my practice, and those things would stress me out. I don't want to go to the office and work on cases all day, come home and watch a legal. It's just not. That's why I like Canterland. I like to come home and go to my retreat center and mill wood or ride an ATV. I don't want to talk about the law anymore or watch a legal show.
That is fair. I know, and I feel like the last thing I watched anything in and or around the industry I work in was probably Mad Men, and fairly disconnected, being a few decades past, and also the people. But I agree. I don't think that there's anything exciting about kind of thinking about the same things you do at work as you watch those shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a good fit.
Yeah.
So yeah, we.
Well, I got one more question here for you, and it's actually, you've mentioned it a couple times, and I've actually been there myself, and it is really, really cool. You took me for a tour around it, but like, you own a retreat center called Cantorland, and how has your sort of work on the land been impactful for either you personally or your business?
Well, first of all, I love my neighbors at the land. They're like my family now, and it's true Missouri. I've got Sherry and Richie King are my caretakers and my neighbors. Richie served in Vietnam. And these are salt of the earth people that I love very dearly. So, we have 50 chickens, and we have goats and horses and dogs. I've got heavy equipment, gas and diesel tanks. And I always joke, but not joking, Richie will shoot you if you come and mess with my stuff, right? Otherwise, I couldn't have any of that, because, things that are unattended, unfortunately, even when there's good people in the world, there's some evil. So the land has affected me profoundly. I absolutely love going there. I love to fish. I love to hunt. I love to improve the land. I'm working with the Department of Conservation on forestry. I just met with them this week. My forestry agent, Tony Pieper, from Missouri Conservation. We controlled burn coming. We were supposed to do it this week, but it rained for just a minute, and so we couldn't do it. The state will pay you to cut the invasives, which maples are native here, but they're used to fire. And we haven't had fires for 50 or 100 years. And so the maples are overpopulated. And cedars, all those things burn up with the fire, but without fire, they take control of the land. So the point is, I've learned a lot about I got a sawmill. I mill all the trees I cut now. So the state pays you, and then I mill them. And, if you come to Cantor Injury Law, I made the walnut table in our conference room. We cut the tree down and milled it. Wonder from Wonder Woods actually put it together. But it's the nicest conference table, in my opinion, anywhere in the world. It's 100% made in Missouri, and it's in Missouri. It'll stay in Missouri forever. That's screams to the of our law firm that our 15-foot, 5-inch solid walnut conference table that's 3.5 inches thick was made completely in Missouri, from materials in Missouri, and by me and my family. So you can't get any more local than that. I like to say that, or compare it, that's us, and these other guys on TV are getting their furniture from China, probably.
Mhm.
That's how removed from this climate. But they have there's a lot of competitors with great advertisements out there. And by the way, again, just so I'm clear, everyone should do their homework before they hire a lawyer. They should look at reviews. They should ask the question of who's going to represent them. They should ask others. And so Canterland has given me that, because I've got a whole community there in mid-Missouri, and I've helped a lot of them that are deserving of help. And they're always legitimate cases, because the people in Missouri, for the most part, they have true cases, particularly in the country.
Mhm.
I've never come to me from a free case and say they were be lying or not injured. That's just not the way it works in middle Missouri, right? The people want nothing to do with a lawyer, but when they want a lawyer, they want a good one. They want someone that's local. So I don't think they're being fooled, and I'm happy to be part of that community.
That's cool. That's really neat. Well, yeah, I must say, yeah, Canterland was fun. I definitely looking forward to hopefully coming out there sometime again soon.
Bring your kids. You're welcome. It was fun. It was great.
Yeah, 100%.
By the treehouse.
Oh yeah. And I forgot to tell you, the eggs were fantastic too.
Oh, good. Yeah, I like I'm working on. I got all cut up now from barbed wire fencing, and I'm doing all sorts of projects, and so there's always work. You come play some, come work some, and there's nothing more wholesome than the Ozarkian hills of Missouri. I mean, Canterland's a great place.
Oh, definitely. I'm a big proponent of the fact that, like, we're surrounded by places that may be kind of flat and boring. On the other side of Missouri, no offense to Kansas, a little flat and boring. Same, drive up to Chicago through Illinois. No offense to Illinois, but Missouri, I don't know, born and raised, but at the same time, I still find it to be incredibly beautiful.
I agree.
Yeah.
Come for another visit.
Cool. Will do. Awesome. Well, Mark, I got to tell you, thank you so much. This was great. I appreciate all your answers, and definitely thanks for being on the podcast. So yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. And I want everyone watching to know that we're never too busy for a new case. So, anyone that's watching this that needs help for a legitimate case, we're happy to help.
Awesome. Well, this has been another episode of Mix and Matchbox. I'm your host, Brent Feldman. We will be back soon with more content. Please like and subscribe. Thanks.